Hi, welcome to the EUDAIMONIA Connection podcast. On today's show, we're going to be speaking to NICOLETA Porojanu from the UK, and she's a very inspirational woman that I've met through my other podcast, who was able to show me how love and kindness and opening your heart can actually connect us. And I really do feel that the way that she lives her life is an inspiration that I wanted to share with the listeners on this podcast. So let's welcome to the show, Nicoleta. How are you?
Hi, Joy. I'm really good, thank you. Yourself?
That's good. I'm good, and I know that you and I have been struggling to catch up, so I'm really glad that the universe, and it's my fault because of the silly daylight savings thing, which I hate because it always mixes up the times for us Australians and the rest of the world. So I know that you've been on my other podcast, but just so my new listeners get to know you, do you want to just share briefly a little bit about you?
Of course I will. So I'm in my early 50s. I had a very rich and interesting life, which naturally brought some very happy moments, but also some hardship. I started as a clinical psychologist, and I gradually moved out of the medical model, or I've transcended somehow the medical model, looking beyond into transpersonal psychology, accounting for a little bit of anthropology, epigenetics, just to understand my own life and health challenges. And then naturally, when I was nearly dying through my breast cancer journey, I have tapped into logotherapy, looking into the meaning of life and searching for a sense of purpose that is allowing us to really embrace life fully, despite its challenges. And naturally throughout life, because I lived with a mystical grandmother and a very wise grandfather in my first 7 years of life, and I always consider them my first mentors, the people that have set me for life, that have instilled valuable, principles and great values that I live by. My grandmother being mystical, I think I was introduced to spirituality quite early. So in my work throughout the years, I've integrated all of these disciplines that I'm talking about, including Eastern spirituality traditions. So the work I'm doing right now, it's a very fresh way of looking into the therapy space and allowing people to really get to know themselves properly, heal their past, and also grow in their wholeness and become the people that they really want to be.
Yeah. And as you know, this podcast is about random questions where, people get to know you through the questions that you get asked about your life, right? So the first question that I ask everyone, which isn't random, it's specific, because the word eudaimonia means fulfillment, seeking fulfillment. So for you, how do you know, what happens to you to know that you've found a fulfilling place? How do you know when you're happy?
Very interesting question. I feel that nothing is absolute, and everything is relative, and everything can change, is transient, just like the nature and the nature of our life. So whether we talk about fulfillment now or tomorrow, when we're looking back in time at what fulfillment meant to us, I think we need to be open to acknowledge that we can only talk about this moment or this stage in our life.
Yes.
So fulfillment for me throughout life has meant different things according to the stage where I found myself in my understanding of life, in my bravery to confront my own facets, my own darkness, in the difficult time to accept the reality of my life with everything it brings.
Can I ask though, do you feel that even in the dark times, you can find that you're fulfilled?
I feel that if we are to remain open and honest and authentic in life, we acknowledge that some aspects are not fulfilling, but there are still others that are beautiful.
Yes.
I mean, even through the most difficult times, I could still feel the human kindness of the people that were treating me.
Yes.
When I was about to give up on fighting. And it wasn't fighting, it wasn't a giving up of life. It was giving up in terms of surrendering everything that I knew about life, everything that was programmed in me.
Yeah.
So even in those times when I was facing death and I thought that might be it, that's the end of it, I could still feel the kindness of the people around me, my family members, the people treating me in that A&E department. I could still feel life in me, in the way it was still bursting somehow to continue. But at the same time, somehow wondering if it's going to be there for long. So fulfillment is such a subjective concept.
Well, I've done a number of these interviews, and everyone has got a different answer, and that's what I love, right? Some people are more subjective, and they say, "I feel fulfilled when I feel this, niggle in my stomach." Where I agree a lot with you is that I find, for example, when I look at some of my adversities, looking back, I'm fulfilled knowing that those adversities led me to this moment. So it's everything in a way is really looked upon in a great gratitude way, right? I think for me anyway, gratitude is a very close connection to fulfillment, right? It's really not undermining something or dismissing something because it may be hard. Sometimes those are gifts, right? And I know that you and I have talked about that before. Like, things that happen to us are not random, are they?
No, not at all. They come on our path to teach us something. They are steps that we need to walk until we get to whatever destination is there, or whatever junction in our roads. And I think appreciation for everything in its wholeness is necessary. And this is what gratitude is about. It's not about, feeling happy for everything that's going on, but acknowledging that some things are quite difficult, quite challenging, but there's also sunshine outside. There's also the beauty of nature. There's also the beauty of human connection. There's also the little pleasures that we have in life, the little distractions that we sometimes confound with happiness. We mistaken them for happiness. Although they somehow bring the sense of something.
But also they're the things that, when we have sadness, that's how we get to know what happiness is. See, so we have to understand. Anyway, we could talk about this forever. Let's start the process. So again, like I explained, the computers randomly picked questions for you. So the first question that's come up is, when you look at your life, can you identify a mistake or a lesson that you learned that you really value?
Oh, yes. I mean, there's so many. I think it's all related to relationships, in the way I learned to be in relationships.
Okay.
Because in my first 7 years of life, of course, I was quite well contained, growing up with two somehow mature grandparents that offered a very, warm and kind and caring environment. But then I moved with my parents and there was domestic abuse. So I was a bit, unclear around what relationships are about. And then in life, I didn't know how I'm responding to things. So I think the greatest mistakes I've made have been around relationships.
And they've probably been the greatest lessons, right, for you?
Yes. How quick I maybe reacted based on my database, on my memory, and my learnings, my previous learnings, to people that have been warm to me, and how much I trusted them because they resemble my grandparents. And then how I reacted to people that were a little bit more upfront, like my father, for example, who never had any stops, any breaks. He was always on the acceleration.
moving fast.
Yes. So very much what you witnessed in life and what you integrated as part of your way of being, your identity, and who you think you are, and this mental map that you create because of this experience that's been offered to you. I think it shapes so much the way you relate with people. And sometimes I was too naive with some. I was maybe a little bit less forgiving and understanding with others. I think it all goes around relationships, even the relationship with myself. There have been times when I haven't been there for myself. I focused a lot on what's going on outside, depriving myself for the self-care that I needed, for the time that I needed, for the space that I needed, for the kindness and the, that kind of compassion that I needed, just pushing myself to pressure and performance and achievement, like most of us in this Western world.
Okay. So tell us honestly, I guess, what you feel are, through your life, your main strengths. Like, what do you feel, if you could mention maybe 2 or 3, if we were looking at your life historically and going, okay, let's celebrate Nicoletta's life, what do you feel are the things that would come up? What are your main strengths?
Resilience is the top list for me. So whatever's been thrown at me, I've managed to,
and did you learn that
stand
through
on my feet.
Did you learn that through what you just described with your family?
I think it's a combination of evolutionary memory, karmic memory, and it's also genetic memory. So it's something in me, in us, as a family, as a lineage, because I've learned a little bit about my past, my life script, what's been assigned to me before I was born, like my ancestry and everything. And then the personal history also helped this resilience to grow, or if it's something that is already innate, because you can look at this from any angle. If it's something that everyone has in them as a resource, they just need to tap into it, then maybe my personal history, my journey in life allow me to connect a bit more with that. So suffer and still be there, remain on your feet.
And with the resilience, does that mean that you can cope with as many situations as you think you can cope with? Because you don't look at it as a fearful thing. You look at it as, I guess, you're coming from a place of strength when something adverse happens to you, right?
Yes. I think we need to embrace it from all angles. It's something that pulls you, from where you are into a very, very turbulent sort of time. And it maybe gets you on your knees, and that's absolutely fine. But it's also something that teaches you that life is not a bliss all the time.
Yes.
Life is meant to be exactly as it is.
Okay.
It brings everything on the same kind of experience. And sometimes you can choose and pick, but other things that are not in your hands, where obviously you don't have the choice.
Yeah.
Which relates to the outside world with other people, that's something that you can't actually control. So you rather embrace it than run away, so you can learn something from it. Because as you transcend that experience, you're coming out of it, through it. So then you look back and you have so much wisdom with you. It teaches you. It's somehow preparing you for the next hit.
Oh God, you talk so beautifully. It's just a beautiful way that you express how you're feeling, which is so wonderful. The next question is, I want you to go back to when you were 16, so you're a teenager, and I want you to think about one of the most funny or memorable teenage moments in your life. Like, something that I guess pops into your head that makes you feel good about being a teenager.
Yes, it's when I officially started dating my late husband, who's not with us anymore. He was my first boyfriend. I knew him for a few years through my cousins. We've been seeing each other at a disco a few times for Christmas or something like that. But then he was released from the army, and he just came to see me. I saw him in front of the house. And from that day, wow, we never separated. We've been everywhere for as long as we've been together.
Yeah.
And we had a child. I think 16 is the age when the most beautiful probably experience has been starting this relationship.
Yeah. And I also think that teenage love that turns into marriage. Because my sister got with my best friend at 16, and they're still in love. I think that's a real pure. There's like an innocence, isn't there? Because you know how sometimes at 16 you don't know anything about the world, but you've met someone that you love, and then he came back for you. Like, so was it? Can you explain the feeling that you had when he came back and was there at your house?
Yes, we've been corresponding through the past year or so whilst he was in the army. We were sending very long letters. I mean, A0 letters, packed in small and wrapped very nicely.
You had lots
so
to
it
say.
was that. Yes, it's that time when you're actually, contemplating the thought of engaging with someone on a romantic level. And it's pure, exactly as you say, it's a very pure way of engaging with someone. And I think all your dreams, all your fantasies are somehow trapped into that kind of romantic adventure.
Yeah.
And then it brings also stability. It brings the idea of partnership. It brings the idea of feeling wanted and appreciated.
But
and
it also
having someone with
doesn't
you.
it? It's connected.
Yes.
Because writing a letter is way more personal than sitting with someone. You could be at a cafe, but when you write a letter and you write pages, like you said, you're really just exposing your heart. And I think it really bonds you, which is a little bit unfortunate that we don't do that anymore. We don't do that art of writing letters. We just send text messages now.
So wonderful said. I mean, you're absolutely right.
Do you still have the letters?
Yes.
Oh, see, that's what I
have them all.
Yeah.
Because after he died, I wanted to capture everything in a box.
Yes.
And keep it there.
Yeah.
I think the creative side of us shows up very easily when we stop thinking and we just sit with ourselves in a moment of honesty, pure honesty with who we really are. Because in this first encounter, when you start loving someone or engaging with someone in a proper relationship, probably the only relationship you choose, that's the first time when you choose to be in a relationship. All of the others, like your parents, your family, the school environment, that's been given to you in a way. You can't make a choice. But when you engage in that first relationship, you bring your real self for the first time in a wonderful space where you're sharing an important part of yourself with someone in a very intimate space.
Do you mind if I ask you a question? Do you mind if I?
Yes.
Because you had the thing with your parents, the domestic stuff that was going on. How did you allow yourself to be so open to love when you met him? Like sometimes there's that trauma, but it sounds to me that you were stronger, and that could be the resilience you talked about, and you didn't allow yourself to be a product of your parents' stuff.
It would have been so easy to be like that. But you know what? My father, I thought at the time that he's an alcoholic and a quite disturbed person. But now, obviously, as I matured and I've learned a lot about life and transgenerational trauma, I can understand what shaped him to be that very weak in reality within himself human being. He compensated for that weakness, insecurity, and trauma that he experienced himself by going at others and treating them horribly in an attempt to receive maybe that kind of love that he didn't feel for a reason or another.
Okay.
So at the time I thought my father is very aggressive and violent and alcoholic and he doesn't care about anyone. And he was very moody, unstable. You never knew how the day is going to unfold. You have beautiful days for a while. He was, very charismatic and full of, ideas and very interesting to be around. But then he would drink and he would become a monster. And then there would be disengagement in the family. No one would talk to anyone.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. You didn't take that on as a fear when you met.
No, because my husband was a very kind, and he would drink, but he would never be aggressive. He would be just caring and full of humor. So he was very funny and very well connected to everyone. Everyone loved him. So I had the image. I actually picked up another alcoholic without knowing. I was still in the safety of being with someone that shows some familiarity. But he was nothing like my father in the way he was behaving towards me or the world. So I didn't know, in a way, what was going on. I realized in time that he was still having his own demons and struggling with his own trauma and drama in the family, having been treated differently, comparing to his older brother. So there was something going on in there, something that he never managed to overcome, until his last day. And probably ate him from inside in a way, made him feel, really unwell in life. But you are mistaken by what's being given to you. So you can make a choice. I think it will be very, very harmful to keep yourself in the same environment you lived in. If you've been with an aggressive father, or very I don't know, unavailable, emotionally unavailable mother, to choose to be with a partner that resembles that. That's very traumatic. I mean, it can happen. I see it happening in my therapy work. Some people choose that, and it's fine. But you need to realize that through that suffering, you're getting a message. Sort this out. I mean, you need to look back and unpack the past and sort it out and heal, and then make the right choice for you right now, for the person that you want to be.
Yeah.
So whatever happened, it happened. It was just the choice I made to be with this man that for a while it showed like he's providing the safety that I needed. I couldn't wait to leave my family home. But then you move into another sort of paradise that looks like hell sometimes. So that's the nature of life and the relationships.
Okay. The next question is, explain your understanding of day and night. So where do you feel your heart goes? Like, you know, some people live for the night, and some people live for the day. So for you, are you a day person or a night person? And can you explain why?
It's interesting to ask me this, because this has changed in life. When I was young, I think I was a little bit scared of darkness. I've never been tested. I didn't, evaluate myself if I'm a nightophobic or anything, But I don't do well when I'm alone in a very dark space,
right?
Because
Okay.
it connects with all these fears that we all have in us about, the uncertainty of everything. So, from the perspective of feeling safe, I do better during the day.
Right.
But in terms of writing, when I was very young, I was a journalist for 5 years, and I was writing for a local newspaper. So I was very creative throughout the day in terms of doing interviews and researching and doing stuff. But I would never write during the day. I was always writing at night.
Wow.
This is when I felt safe. With the computer. It was the beginning of the computer stuff. So I had that huge monitor.
It's interesting that the nighttime makes you feel connected to the uncertainty, but that the computer makes you feel safe. And, do you think that in hindsight, you were really there was an element of the sameness, like you were creative at night and it wasn't really about being scared?
It could have been. I never thought of this.
Oh, because I'm wondering why you didn't write during the day. Like, I wonder why during the day you were doing all the research and running around. Maybe
it's about the stimulation and the distraction and the noise.
Yes, okay.
When you create, you want a little bit of space for yourself. And sometimes when you're young, you can't actually create it in the turmoil of the noise outside. Probably you're familiar with Donald Winnicott, who had such a massive contribution in terms of understanding attachment, what attachment is for us. He wrote a book about being alone in the presence of others, an entire book on this concept. When I was young and I was studying this, I didn't understand it. But what he's talking about, he's making a little bit of a difference between aloneness and loneliness.
Yes.
And then
also, and when you're with someone, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to attach to what they're going through.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he's also bringing both concepts to the perspective of being surrounded by others. So you can actually be alone whilst you have people around you, because you can create a moment of connection with yourself only, and you focus inwards. But you can also be very lonely in the presence of many others, So it's very interesting how we're looking at this. I think for me, it was more around feeling able to silence the outer noise.
Yeah, and I guess darkness, nighttime represents that it's not as. I like the way that you said that you like the noise and the movement of stuff during the day, but at nighttime everyone's in their houses and it's not as loud, so it gives you permission to be whatever you choose to be at night.
Yes.
Did you ever go out at night to party or anything?
I had, but because I got married very early at 18, and then we had our son, who's now 32, 33 soon. I haven't been through that kind of, partying style or
But the reason I asked you that is because it really does explain the day and night thing more. I think there's no right or wrong answer. It's just more the fact that you explained you explained it beautifully. You connected with the way that the creativity and all that at night. I'm the same as you. Like I like nighttime when it's quiet. I become more creative because I find the daylight gives me distractions to go and
Yes.
play with the hustle and the bustle.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And now as you're talking, you know what's coming to my mind? I think in a way the real self,
Mm.
our true self, is showing
At
up at
nighttime.
night.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
more than throughout the day, because during
Yeah.
the day we have so many roles, all of these social persona that we send out with our body, mind, and souls to play different roles, you know, as the mother,
Mm.
the sister, the whatever, the employee, the therapist, whatever I am and you are, and then the neighbor, you know, the taxpayer,
It's
having to
true, isn't
worry
it?
for submitting the tax returns. Now it's beginning of April and all of these things, whatever's
Yeah.
going on in our lives.
Mm.
So during the day we can say that the false self, that kind of false identity is presented to the world as a means to survive. You know, it's the survival. You just need to play this act on this big scene of the world. All of
Mm.
us, we do it.
Mm.
That's the culture, that's the way. But then at night we permit ourselves to retreat back into who we really are
Yes,
and
or
sit with that.
even that's when your vulnerabilities and your fears and all that come up, isn't it? So
Mm.
in a way, that is a real you. All right, I'll
Yes.
ask you the last question because I know that
Okay.
you're very generous to give us your time, but it's a really sort of hard question, I guess, if you don't feel it. But I guess just drop into it, okay? So in this
Yes.
day and age, in this moment in time, what do you feel that you can't stomach?
I
Like,
can't stomach.
yeah,
Okay.
like what
I
is it
can't
about?
digest.
Yeah, like what is it about the world at the moment that you're really struggling to stomach? And it could be people or it could be a situation.
I think it's just a circumstance. It's the nature of things. I think it's how little we are awakened to the reality of our lives and how much we are trapped into this programmed mind, all of us. How little we know about the reality of what it means to be human. How little we know about the world.
Mm.
How deluded we are through this formation within the first years in the family and then through the education system. And many of us study for such a long time. I studied for 30 formal years. For what? Because everything I've learned, or most of it, I've learned through living. But then we don't get prepared for life. You
Mm.
know, our teachers are handling their own drama. Our parents are
Mm.
trapped in their own drama.
So how
We
does
don't
that then?
seem
So
to be
how does
awakened.
that make you like? How does that affect you? Like, so is it people not when they're not when you what you're talking about? Do you hear it? Do you and that is what you can't stomach? It's people telling you, or is it just what you're seeing?
I feel very lonely sometimes with
Yeah.
people that are just lost in their worlds
Yes, I
and
totally
they are
get
not
you.
awakened to the reality of what's going on.
Yes.
They just harm themselves. They just, you know,
Or they get
create so
distracted,
much
or
harm in
they're
other
not,
people's lives.
or they don't have
Yes,
compassion. It's like
yes, and they
so
live
you're
on
quite
superficial levels
yeah
in a
you're
way.
quite empathetic, aren't you? So you feel that
Yes,
yeah
yes, and I feel their loss, and I feel my loss.
yeah
I felt the loss of my patients because I worked as a clinical psychologist in palliative care first when I
mm.
started. I was young in my early 30s. I mean, 20 years ago. I was a kid myself. If I look back now, I was my son's age. So he's a kid for me.
yeah
But
yeah
then what did I know about the dying? I looked at these people, they were all dying, all sorts of ages, all sorts of illnesses, some old age, others not. You know, I was thinking, what's going on with them? Because they were all lost. Why did I leave? All of these existential questions. I couldn't really grasp them, I couldn't capture them, but I remember them. I absorbed them in a way and I
yeah.
let them,
Did it
you know,
change you?
do something.
Did
Yes,
it change the way you saw your own life?
it changed the trajectory of my life completely. Personal life, I've started to look more closely into what is it that I really want. So I moved out of clinical psychology. I trained as a psychotherapist and then as a counselor, and I continue to train, searching for that something that was important to me as a human being to heal myself, just changing therapies, wanting to learn more tools and get there. And I'm
Mm.
still on the way. I haven't found
Yeah
anything that is
yeah
a miracle,
mm.
but it also changed the way I work, the way I related to the people, who I think I am in the world, what's my meaning and what's my purpose and what
Mm.
I'm doing. And I think this question is very smart because it allows me to connect. I think it's the first time when I'm thinking of this, to be honest. It's weird, but it's real. I'm authentic here. It's not that I don't digest it, but it's hard to digest it. It's
yeah
hard to live with it. It's hard to witness it.
But
It's
also
this.
that's from my perspective, right? Your answers are quite, they're quite felt, and I think that that's the reason why this podcast is important, because I've had a variety of different people, and people express things differently, right? And I relate to you a lot because I feel when you said I sometimes feel lonely. Like, that's the first time I've ever heard anyone say that, because I feel that sometimes. That loneliness of where people don't know because they're distracted, right? I
Yes.
sort of sometimes feel like people don't care,
They do,
right?
but they are on a
I've,
different frequency. They are
yeah,
on a different level of consciousness.
yeah.
They haven't been able, for a reason or another, to awaken and permit themselves to elevate themselves to another vibration of love, of care, of compassion, and understanding, and tolerance, and acceptance. It's so easy to function from there,
Mm,
but I haven't managed to get there through the hardship that I've been, until I actually was faced with a death, with my imminent death, when I was
right.
very, very ill throughout my breast cancer journey. So for me, the surrender, I knew about it. I could conceptualize it. I would talk about it, and I would make sense of it in my intellect, but I couldn't feel it. So I
Yes.
couldn't feel the surrender. I couldn't feel the awakening until I suffered enough to transcend these limitations of the tunnel mind.
Yeah.
That was it. So people need to transcend that, but when you explain it to them, they can't get it
I
through
think, I
their
think, I
intellect.
think, I think. This. I've been debating that with other people. Is that, do you need to experience something like you went through to get it, or can you learn to do it without going through that? And that's a really hard question, isn't it?
It's a bit of both.
Because you and I have both been through a situation of
Yes.
like life changing thing. I understand you exactly, because you can't explain to someone what you went through. It's your experience, right?
Okay.
So it is hard, because some people who don't have adversity, everything's easy. Or they see things easy, so
Yes.
they don't have to break. Well, you went through something where you had to break.
There's young souls and old souls on this earth. People,
Yes.
if you believe in reincarnation, if you would tell me this 10, 20 years ago, I would say, go away, you're a little bit loco. What are you talking about? Let's stay within the science boundaries and talk about facts. Yeah, as a scientist, as a psychologist, you come with the facts. Let's measure it. Let's see if it's real. It needs to be visible in this material world. Otherwise, we can't count it, we can't compare it, isn't
Yeah,
it?
true.
But now, when you embrace your spirituality, then it changes completely the way you look at life.
It's a totally different world.
Yes,
That's the
yes,
thing. Funny is that we're all living in the same world, and you've talked so much about different stages of your life, but they're all different worlds.
yes,
Like you've been doing palliative care, that was a different world to say if you did it now.
yes,
You'd be,
yes,
so I love that.
yes.
Nicoletta, I'm going to let you go, because I know you've been very, very, very good to me. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this episode, because it's sort of like a much deeper spiritual connection. Your answers.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure and a gift for me to share this with you and your listeners.
Thank you. You've been listening to the EUDAIMONIA Connection podcast. So don't forget, this podcast is out every first Wednesday of every month. So make sure you hit like and subscribe. I'm going to put all the information about Nicoletta below. So if you do have a desire to reach out to her, she's very friendly and very beautiful. So just reach out and have a chat to her. And have a great day, everyone. And don't forget, seek your fulfillment. Bye.